You know what they say about first impressions? Well, apparently nobody told the Galactic Council that treating your guests like zoo animals might leave a bad taste in their mouths. But hey, I'm getting ahead of myself here. My name is Captain Rex Murphy, though everyone calls me Bulldog for reasons that'll become crystal clear in about 10 minutes. 3 months ago, I was minding my own business commanding a deep space patrol when Earth Command decided I'd be perfect for their new cultural exchange program. Apparently, my tendency to speak my mind and my complete inability to kiss ass made me the ideal candidate to represent humanity to our new galactic neighbors. Lucky me. The Galactic Council had extended this oh-so-generous invitation for humanity to join their prestigious organization. All we had to do was prove we weren't complete barbarians by participating in their cultural exchange program. Simple, right? What could possibly go wrong? So there I was, standing in the grand entrance hall of the Zephyrian Academy, trying not to laugh at the pompous welcome ceremony they'd arranged. Picture this, a bunch of 7-foot-tall, blue-skinned aliens with way too many teeth, all wearing robes that looked like they'd raided a Renaissance fair, bowing and scraping like I was some kind of visiting dignitary instead of what they really thought I was, which was basically a talking monkey in a uniform. The academy itself was impressive, I'll give them that. Massive crystal spires reaching toward the purple sky, floating platforms carrying students between buildings, and holographic displays showing off their advanced technology. It was like someone had taken every sci-fi movie ever made and thrown them in a blender with unlimited budget. Ambassador Vex Tal, my assigned handler, glided over with that condescending smile that all politicians seem to perfect regardless of species. He was tall even for a Zephyrian, with silver markings along his cranial ridges that apparently indicated high social status. Think of a cross between a shark and a used car salesman, and you've got the picture. "Captain Murphy," he said, his voice dripping with fake enthusiasm, "welcome to our humble institution. We are so very excited to showcase humanity's, shall we say, unique qualities to our students." The way he said unique made it sound like he was talking about a particularly interesting strain of bacteria. "Yeah, I bet you are," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Years of military service had taught me when to pick my battles, and I had a feeling I'd need to save my energy for later. That's when I saw her, and in the center of the main exhibition hall, surrounded by a crowd of gawking alien students, was a human woman. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair and intelligent eyes that were currently focused on some kind of holographic display. What caught my attention wasn't her appearance, though. It was the fact that she was wearing what could generously be called primitive clothing, and more importantly, she had restraints around her wrists. Actual chains. In the year 2387, on a human being. I felt something cold settle in my stomach as I watched the alien students point and whisper among themselves like she was some kind of exhibit, which, as it turned out, was exactly what she was. "Ah," Vextal noticed my stare. "I see you've spotted our prize specimen. That's Zara, one of our most popular displays. She demonstrates typical human problem-solving techniques and basic tool usage. Quite fascinating how your species manages to function with such limited cognitive capacity." I'm pretty sure my eye started twitching at that point. "Limited cognitive capacity?" I asked, my voice carefully controlled. "Oh yes. Yeah." Vextal continued, completely oblivious to the warning signs. "It's remarkable, really. Despite their primitive neural architecture, humans can still perform basic mathematical calculations and even operate simple machinery. We've found that positive reinforcement works best with your species, much like training domestic animals. And that's when I knew this cultural exchange program was about to go sideways in a big way. Now, I'd like to say I kept my cool and handled the situation with the diplomatic grace befitting Earth's representative. I'd like to say that, but it would be a complete lie. Vextal decided it was time for a demonstration. He called over to the crowd of students, who parted to reveal Zara more clearly. She looked up as we approached, and I caught something in her eyes that didn't match the docile exhibit act she was putting on. There was intelligence there, sharp and calculating, like she was constantly analyzing everything around her. "Students," Vextal announced in that theatrical way politicians love. Observe as I demonstrate proper human management techniques. As you can see, the specimen responds well to clear, simple commands. He turned to Zara with that patronizing smile. Zara, please show our guests how humans solve basic mathematical problems. She looked at him for a moment, then at me, then back at him. Which mathematical problems would you like me to solve? Ambassador? Something appropriate for your cognitive level. Perhaps addition of single-digit numbers. I watched Zara's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. Then she smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. How about I calculate the probability of this Academy security system being compromised by what you call a primitive neural architecture? The color drained from Vextal's face. Well, as much as blue skin can drain of color anyway. That's not, you're supposed to, he stammered. Then his expression hardened. You will follow the demonstration protocol. Or what? Zara asked, her voice perfectly calm. And that's when Ambassador Vextal made the mistake that would echo across the galaxy. He raised his hand, clearly intending to strike her for her insubordination. He never got the chance. I moved faster than I'd moved in years, grabbing his wrist mid-swing. The crack of bone was audible across the hall as I applied just enough pressure to get his attention. I wouldn't, I said quietly, my voice carrying that particular tone that had made countless subordinates reconsider their life choices. The hall went dead silent. Every alien student, every faculty member, every floating camera drone focused on us. Vextal's eyes went wide with shock and what I was pretty sure was the first real fear he'd felt in decades. You dare assault a Galactic Council member? Chained, he wheezed. Assault? I released his wrist and stepped back, making sure my voice carried to every corner of the hall. I prevented you from committing assault on a human being, who, last I checked, has the same rights as any other sentient being in this galaxy. That's when Zara decided to drop her bombshell, actually. Dare, she said conversationally. As if we were discussing the weather, I've been documenting several violations of galactic sentient rights laws for the past 6 months. Along with detailed records of this Academy's illegal experimentation protocols, their financial manipulation of primitive species development funds, and approximately 47 instances of what your own laws define as crimes against sentience. The silence somehow got even more complete. You see, she continued, standing up and letting the restraints fall away from her wrists, these chains have been unlocked for weeks. I've been using this Academy's own quantum communication array to transmit everything I've observed directly to Earth Command, the Galactic Rights Commission, and about 30 different news networks across 12 sectors. Vextal's face went from blue to a distinctly unhealthy shade of purple. Impossible. Our security systems are impenetrable. No primitive species could possibly bypass your quantum encryption, hack your administrative databases, and plant monitoring subroutines in your communication networks. Zara finished. You're right. No primitive species could do that. Good thing I'm not primitive. She tapped something on a device that definitely hadn't been part of her exhibit costume, and every display screen in the Academy flickered to life, showing file after file of damning evidence. Security alert. Came an automated voice. Authorized data transmission detected. Academy database is compromised. Emergency lockdown initiated. And that's when things got really interesting. You know that moment in action movies when the villain realizes the hero has been 3 steps ahead the entire time? Vextal was having that moment, and it was beautiful to watch. The holographic displays throughout the Academy were now cycling through what I could only describe as a greatest hits collection of galactic corruption. And financial records showing the misappropriation of development funds meant for primitive species. Communication logs revealing how the Galactic Council had been manipulating first contact scenarios to ensure new species remained dependent on their guidance. And most damning of all, detailed protocols for something called the Cognitive Limitation Project. This is fascinating reading, I said, scanning the scrolling data. So let me get this straight. The Galactic Council has been deliberately sabotaging the technological development of new species to keep them dependent and controllable. And here I thought you all were just naturally condescending. Vextal was frantically tapping at his communication device, trying to contact someone, anyone, who could help him contain this disaster. Unfortunately for him, Zara had apparently thought of that too. "Oh, I should mention," she said casually, "your communication array is currently broadcasting all of this on every major galactic news frequency. I figured transparency was important." A student near the back of the crowd spoke up. "Ambassador Vextal, is this information accurate? Has the Council been limiting our species development as well?" This is obviously fabricated data," Vextal sputtered. "Human technology is far too primitive to breach our security systems." "Right," I said, "because nothing says primitive like successfully infiltrating the most secure facility in the galaxy while pretending to be a chained exhibit. I have to ask, how long did it take you to figure out she wasn't actually restrained?" The look on his face told me everything I needed to know. "You never figured it out, did you?" I couldn't help but laugh. "For 6 months, you had a human intelligence operative documenting every illegal thing you were doing. And you were so convinced of your own superiority that you never questioned whether the chains were real." More students were speaking up now, asking questions, demanding answers. The carefully controlled environment of the academy was dissolving into chaos as young minds began questioning everything they'd been taught about galactic hierarchy. "The Taurian species was classified as cognitively limited last year," one student said, reading from the displays. "But according to this data, they'd already developed faster than light communication before first contact. The Council suppressed that information." "The Villani were told their mathematical systems were too primitive for galactic society," another added. "But they'd actually surpassed Council standards in theoretical physics." I watched as decades of carefully constructed propaganda crumbled in real time. It was like watching someone realize that the Wizard of Oz was just a little man behind a curtain, except the curtain was made of lies and the wizard was a galactic government. "This is preposterous." Vextal tried one last time. "Even if this data were genuine, which it obviously isn't, the Galactic Council exists to guide and protect less developed species. We maintain order and stability throughout the galaxy." "Stability," Zara repeated thoughtfully. "Is that what you call keeping entire civilizations in artificial states of dependence while you strip mine their resources and exploit their populations?" "Because I have about 40,000 pages of documentation that suggests otherwise." The communication devices throughout the academy began chiming with incoming priority messages, emergency council sessions being called, news networks demanding statements, other species beginning to ask uncomfortable questions about their own first contact experiences. "You know what the really funny part is?" I said. "Watching Vextal's political career implode in real time. You could have just treated us with basic respect. Could have acknowledged that different doesn't mean inferior." "Why, the employer commits any san," the parenting dull way. "But no, you had to go with the whole humans are adorable pets approach. How's that working out for you?" "Well," the answer, judging by the growing crowd of very angry alien students and the increasingly frantic messages flooding in from across the galaxy, was not very well at all. And we were just getting started. "Now, I need to paint you a picture of what was happening back on Earth while Vextal was discovering that underestimating humans might be hazardous to your political health." See, Zara hadn't just been transmitting evidence to random news outlets. She'd been sending everything directly to Admiral Kate Rodriguez, Earth's Director of Interstellar Relations, and a woman who made me look like a diplomatic saint. When Kate got angry, Star Systems took notice. The first sign that Earth was less than pleased came in the form of what our diplomatic corps politely called a clarification request. In reality, it was the political equivalent of loading a shotgun and asking someone if they felt lucky. Vextal's communication device chimed with an incoming priority transmission from Earth. The holographic display showed Admiral Rodriguez, and even through the blue-tinted projection, you could see she was absolutely furious. "Ambassador Vextal," she said, and her voice could have frozen helium. "I trust you can explain why one of our citizens has been held in chains and displayed as a primitive curiosity for the past 6 months." "Admiral Rodriguez," Vextal tried to regain his composure, I assure you this is all a misunderstanding. The human volunteer was treated with the utmost care and respect. Volunteer? Kate's laugh was sharp enough to cut steel. Let me clarify something for you, Ambassador. Zara Chen is a Lieutenant Commander in Earth Intelligence. She volunteered for a deep cover intelligence gathering mission, not to be your performing monkey. The color that had been slowly returning to Vextal's face promptly disappeared again. She's military intelligence? He whispered. Was that not clear from the fact that she completely compromised your entire security infrastructure? Kate asked. Or did you think civilian humans just naturally knew how to hack quantum encryption as a hobby? I decided this was a good time to jump in. Admiral, I should probably mention that Ambassador Vextal here was just about to demonstrate proper human management techniques by striking Lieutenant Commander Chen. The silence that followed was the kind of silence you get right before a supernova. When Kate finally spoke, her voice was so calm it was terrifying. He was going to do what? Strike her, I repeated helpfully. You know, like you'd discipline a misbehaving pet. Really drove home the whole humans are adorable primitives theme they've got going here. That's when things got interesting on a galactic scale. Within 6 hours, the human fleet had arrived in the Zephyrian system. Not just a diplomatic vessel or a small escort. The entire Third Fleet, led by the dreadnought Indomitable, took up positions around the Academy's planet. When I say the Third Fleet, I'm talking about 67 ships including 12 heavy cruisers and the kind of firepower that could crack a moon if someone looked at it wrong. The message was subtle but clear. Earth was no longer interested in playing nice. Now, let me explain how this is going to work. Admiral Rodriguez continued her transmission, and by now every major news network in the galaxy was carrying it live. The Galactic Council has exactly 72 hours to provide a full accounting of every human citizen who has been subjected to this cultural exchange program. You will also provide reparations for the illegal detention and mistreatment of our people. Admiral. Vextal tried to interrupt. Surely we can resolve this through proper diplomatic channels. Diplomatic channels? Kate's smile was razor sharp. You mean like how you diplomatically chained our people and put them on display? Like how you diplomatically planned to strike a human being for having the audacity to demonstrate intelligence? Those diplomatic channels? The Academy's emergency communication system activated, broadcasting an incoming transmission from the Galactic Council headquarters. Chancellor Mordak himself appeared on screen, looking like he'd aged several years in the past few hours. Admiral Rodriguez, he began carefully, the Galactic Council deeply regrets any misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? I cut him off. Chancellor, with all due respect, there's video evidence of your people treating humans like zoo animals. What part of that is unclear? The cultural exchange program was designed to foster better understanding between species. By putting our people in chains. Kate's voice rose slightly. By classifying us as cognitively limited. By planning to strike our personnel when they demonstrate capabilities that contradict your prejudices. The Chancellor looked like he desperately wanted to be anywhere else in the galaxy. We are prepared to offer compensation. Compensation? Kate stood up, and even through the hologram you could feel the authority radiating from her. Chancellor, let me be very clear about something. Earth's patience with galactic politics just ran out. You have 48 hours to dissolve the current council structure and establish a new governing body based on actual equality rather than species superiority. Or we solve this problem our way. You cannot threaten the Galactic Council, the Chancellor blustered. I'm not threatening anyone, Kate replied calmly. I'm informing you of the consequences of your actions. The galaxy is about to learn what happens when you mistake human restraint for weakness. And just like that, everything changed. You ever see a house of cards collapse? It starts slow, one card shifting just a little. Then suddenly the whole thing comes down in a rush. That's exactly what happened to the Galactic Council's authority over the next 48 hours. It started with the Taurians. Remember them? The species that had been classified as cognitively limited despite having developed faster-than-light communication before first contact. Well, turns out they'd been keeping detailed records of every interaction with the Council, and Zara's data dump had given them the context they needed to understand what had really been happening to them. Their response was swift and decisive. They withdrew from all Council programs, expelled Council representatives from their space, and issued what they called a correction of historical record that basically amounted to a detailed list of every lie the Council had told about their capabilities. The Vellani were next. Then the Keth Mori. Then about 15 other species whose development had been deliberately suppressed by the Council's guidance. Within 36 hours, nearly half the galaxy was in open revolt against Council authority. Vextal, meanwhile, was having what I can only describe as a complete breakdown. The Academy had been shut down by its own board of directors, the Zephyrian government had publicly apologized for the treatment of humans, and his personal communication device hadn't stopped chiming with legal summons, impeachment proceedings, and what I assumed were very strongly worded complaints from his mother. "This is all your fault," he said to me as we watched his political career burn on every news feed in the galaxy. "Everything was stable before you humans arrived." "Stable," I repeated thoughtfully. "You know, that's the second time someone's used that word. Funny how maintaining stability seems to require keeping everyone else down." The real entertainment came when other Council members started trying to distance themselves from the whole mess. Suddenly, nobody could remember approving the cultural exchange program. The Cognitive Limitation Project became a rogue operation that no one had authorized. The financial records showing systematic exploitation were obviously fabricated by disgruntled species seeking attention. "Fascinating," Zara commented as we watched Chancellor Mordak's third press conference of the day. "For such an advanced civilization, they seem remarkably bad at taking responsibility for their actions." "Oh, that's not a technology problem," I said. "That's just good old-fashioned politics. Some things are universal, apparently." The end came faster than anyone expected. On the second day, Admiral Rodriguez received a formal surrender from the Galactic Council. Not a negotiation, not a compromise, but an actual surrender. They agreed to dissolve the current power structure, submit to investigation by an independent tribunal, and participate in establishing a new galactic government based on genuine equality between species. Vextal took the news about as well as you'd expect. "This is impossible," he ranted. "The Council has maintained order for over 3,000 years. A primitive species cannot simply overthrow galactic civilization." "You're right," I agreed. "Primitive species probably couldn't. Good thing there weren't any primitive species involved." The coup de grace came when the tribunal announced that former Council members would be assigned to cultural rehabilitation programs to help them understand the species they'd been oppressing. Vextal's assignment was particularly poetic. He would be spending the next 5 years working as a cultural liaison on Earth, learning about human society from the ground up. "But I don't understand human culture," he protested weakly. "Don't worry," I told him with my biggest smile. "We'll start you off with something simple. It's like basic respect for sentient beings. I hear it's not too cognitively demanding." Looking back, I think that was the moment Vextal finally understood that his view of the galaxy had been fundamentally, catastrophically wrong. The species he dismissed as primitive had just dismantled 3 millennia of established galactic order in less than 2 days. And the best part? We'd done it without firing a single shot. 6 months later, I found myself sitting in what used to be the Galactic Council chambers, trying not to laugh as I watched the inaugural session of the new Galactic Alliance. The irony wasn't lost on me that Earth's primitive representative was now serving as the Alliance's first director of species relations, a job I'd specifically requested to avoid. The changes had been remarkable. The old hierarchical system where advanced species guided primitive ones had been replaced with a cooperative structure where each species contributed according to their strengths. Turns out, when you stop assuming some species are naturally inferior, you discover they have capabilities you never imagined. The Taurians, for instance, had revolutionized galactic communication with their advanced quantum protocols. The Vellani had solved 3 major theoretical physics problems that had puzzled the old Council for centuries. The Keth Mori had developed environmental restoration techniques that were already healing damaged worlds across the galaxy. Zara had been promoted to Director of Galactic Intelligence, a position that basically made her the most feared person in known space. She'd kept the monitoring systems she'd developed for her undercover work, and now she used them to ensure the new alliance stayed honest. Politicians across the galaxy had learned to behave themselves, knowing that Zara was probably watching. "Director Murphy," she said, entering my office with her usual perfectly timed arrival, "we have a situation." "In good situation or bad situation?" I asked, not looking up from the stack of diplomatic requests on my desk. "Depends on your perspective. The Zephyrian Education Department is requesting assistance in developing new curricula that don't include sections on species hierarchy and cognitive limitations.